Hey guys, so I think I was a little bit excited when I was filming my last project video, to the point where when I got home and I started compiling stuff on my video editor, I noticed I actually did no talking on what a tender actually is, does, why we have it, and how it's going to save us money. So I figure I better do something on that. Most farmers that follow me, if there is farmers that follow me, they probably have some sort of idea of what a tender is. Maybe they don't use it, maybe they have one, maybe they call it something totally different. Maybe it serves a different purpose. Anyway, it all falls under the same kind of category. I should say this could be called something totally different where you are. Around here, I've heard often tender, or a spray trailer, or a bulker, sometimes even a nurse trailer. They're all probably correct in their own way, shape, or form. I don't think there is any exact. I like to call them a tender. But I would love to hear what they're called where you are. So if you want to drop me a like, subscribe, throw me a comment, tell me where you're from, and what they're called where you are. So in its simplest form, it is a truck or trailer that hauls the consumable product out to the applicator in the field or near the field, so that you have as minimal downtime as possible, whether that is spraying, whether that is broadcasting, whether that is seeding or planting. That's the idea of a tender. There's several different types that I can think of, but essentially you can boil it down into 3 different categories. You have a dry tender, which could be haul your granular fertilizer out, your seed, or say a dry flowable like gypsum. And that gets hauled out to where you are. It helps you fill faster and helps you get back at it. You can have a liquid, which is this one, and that's for spraying urea, liquid urea, like 2800 applications, or other guys, not us, but other people will have liquid phos, and they put that in with the drill. So they'll have their seed in the drill. They'll probably have a dry tender for their seed and their granular fertilizer, and then they'll also have a liquid cart being carried behind, and this guy is used to fill that. The final one is more of a gas, but I'm going to call it pressured liquid because it's usually in liquid form when it's being on here, which is primarily ammonia. Those are the most common ones that you would see in this area. The purpose of the tender is simple, and it's just to keep the machine fed. Whether, like I said, whether that's broadcasting, seeding, spraying, whatever. Now, obviously, the least efficient way would be for the seeder that only travels at 15 mile an hour or 20 mile an hour, be X miles away, have to fold up, leave the field, come here to the yard, fill out of a bin or 2 or 3, return, unfold. It's going to take you longer to fold that, to do all that travel time and everything else, than it would to actually apply that product. You would spend more time out of the field than you would in the field. On the flip side, the most efficient way would be to meet the sprayer or seeder or application equipment where they are when they run out at that very minute, or their last full pass before they run out. That's not always feasible either, but that is the most efficient way of doing it, because it is literally, you don't have any transit time in the field, you don't have any fold up time. It is there waiting for you. And in some cases, like say you're filling a granular spreader, you could pretty much be driving under the tender and they turn it on before you get out of the cab. Like, it could be that efficient. Now, Obviously, it's not always possible to do that. Whether it is timing or conditions or equipment or manpower or what have you. For example, if it's wet, you're not going to be wanting to haul this thing fully loaded across the field. Or if it's in crop, as in say it's June, July, and your crop is, 2-3 feet tall, you don't want to be driving across the field to trample it with this and the sprayer, that you may as well have the sprayer come to you. Sometimes you just don't have the manpower to do it. Sometimes you don't have the equipment to do it. The purpose of a tender is simple. It's to just keep that applicator fed and to do all the running around with a faster, more nimble, typically less expensive piece of equipment. For the rest of the video, we will focus on the sprayer. I could keep on saying, well, in granular this or liquid that or gas that, but all we're gonna do is overcomplicate things. Just strip it down to be simple. It's gonna make a lot more sense, and we're gonna cut this video down probably by 10 minutes. So the sprayer itself that we have, which is over there, tucked away, we farm 5,000 acres, but it is on every acre that we own, typically on average 4 times a year. So we have burn off or pre-emerge, and those are sort of mutually exclusive. If you do a burn off on a field, it's very rare that you're doing a pre-emerge unless something strange really happens. So there's one application. Then we'll have an in-crop herbicide when the crop's nice and small. So that's the second application. In a good year, when things are, or even if it's a really wet year, you're gonna need fungicide. So that's the third one. And then you're also gonna, a lot of crop we end up either pre-harvesting or desiccating. And if you, this is a little more complex, but if you pre-harvest it, it's not likely that you're gonna go back and post-harvest it. But if you desiccate it, it is very likely that you'll go back and post-harvest. So those are our typical 4 times a year. So we have 5,000 acres, but the sprayer does 20,000 acres a year. So this is our, well, we'll call it tender trailer. It really is, in essence, a tender trailer. It's just not a very well set up, and it's way too small for us. That tank is 1,550 gallons. That mixing tank, which is a Chem Manager, it's only 35 gallons. The pump, you can't really see it. But it's a 6.5 horse Honda. 2-inch pump. Probably an effective average max rate of about 125 gallons a minute. So that mixing hopper is fairly small, and it's slow because of the way things are plumbed here. You're actually rinsing with contaminated water. For us, scenario number 1, which is what we do most of the time during seeding, when it's mainly just the two of us. Dad runs the seeder most of the time, and I run the sprayer most of the time, and then I do all the other running around, keeping other stuff full so that he can just go. But that guy is usually parked over in front of that tank, or just to this side. Or it's down at my uncle's, and it is parked beside a building. Both of those places have active water. Both of them put out about 500 gallons an hour. That black hose is actually connected to a solenoid valve and a float, which is in another video. I'll try and link it right here. But that is my autofill system. So that thing just keeps filling and emptying. It'll fill automatically, stop. I'll come and I'll take whatever fluid I need. As soon as it gets down about 200 gallons, it kicks on and starts filling. Now, it works pretty good because we're on limited manpower, but it's not the most effective thing in the world. It costs us a lot of time and a lot of engine hours, and typically that means more maintenance and definitely means more value depreciation on the machine. So every time I finish spraying a tank, I have to stop, and the machine won't let you drive while you're folding, so you have to fold everything in. Then I have to drive, I like to call it transit, across the field, because it's very rare that you run out of whatever you have on the right side of the field. So we'll call that 2 minutes to fold up, another 2 to 3 minutes. So we'll, 2 to 5 minutes to drive across the field onto the road. And let's say an average is, 5 miles that I have to drive. It's not out of the ordinary. A lot of times it's only half a mile. Or, we could go 100 yards at times. But to say it's on average 5 miles, well, that's 10 minutes at 30 miles an hour. Then I get here, I have to hook up, mix my chemicals one at a time while filling the sprayer. And sometimes that little tank takes, 2 or 3 fills. I can't be filling while I'm emptying because I don't have a flow meter. I will in the future. Takes about 20 minutes. If it's not an overly complex blend, that's probably a low end to mix, probably closer to 25 minutes to mix. And then I have to redo everything I just did. So I have to drive the other 5 minutes or 10 minutes back to the field and spend 2 to 5 minutes driving across the field to get back to where I was. And then I need to unfold and then resume. All in all, you're talking 55 minutes to an hour of downtime per load. We have some land that from here is about 12 miles at the furthest, 9 miles at the closer part. But same thing, this is where we end up leaving the trailer. So to do that, all in all, it's at least 90 minutes between loads. So keep that in mind. I'll get back to that. Our typical spray speed, depending on conditions and what you're doing and all that, wind, application rate, yada, 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 a good 10 to 15 miles per hour. The sprayer width, 120 feet. If you guys remember from my floating video, let's do 120 feet times my speed in miles per hour. And let's say I'm 85% efficient. So I'm doing corners. I've got a little bit of overlap here and there. I got some speed up, I got some slow down. But all in all, let's say 85% of, it works out to be I'm using 85% of the boom all the time. Because I'm not doing 2-3 mile long strips. So if you figure out we have 120 feet, but we'll divide that by 10. You need to at some point here. So 12 times my speed times my efficiency factor is going to give you my overall acres per hour. So 12 times the low end of 10, well, that's 120 times 0.85, you're right around 100. If I'm doing 15, you add 50% to that, we'll call it 150 acres an hour. Average it out, we'll call it 125 acres an hour I spray when I'm in the field. And scenario 2 is when we have the extra manpower, so either we have somebody helping us or Dad's not busy, I'm not busy, Dad's spraying, but we essentially have the extra manpower for a guy to run this, and he runs back and forth between the water source all day long. In that case, you're still 20 to 25 minutes to fill and another 2 to 5 minutes of driving back and forth. So you're over half an hour for a fill. So this tender trailer is going to have a 3-inch combine with a 13 horsepower pump. I should be able to do pump 250 gallons a minute on the low end. Actually, from what I read on the website, they rated at 364 gallons a minute, but I'm not sure on what kind of head pressure that has. I'll be able to mix at least 2 products, feasibly 3, because I'm going to have the Chembine, which is a large, it's like 270 liter, 275 liters. I'd have to double check on that, but it's probably close to, if not twice the size of our little Chem Manager. I'm going to plumb in the Chem Manager beside it, and there's also an adductor on the Chembine, so I can suck directly from totes or drums or barrels, whatever. So really, mixing time is going to be way down, and when we're mixing, you're pretty much just idling your pump. Otherwise, you won't have time to get all of your chemicals in before you get full of water. So based on the rate and the layout, I'm going to guess should be able to easily do 10 minutes once we get the hang of things. 10 minutes of fill. You still got to add your transit time across the field. And even if it's just sitting here, you know, you're saving 15 to 20 minutes per load. But let's be reasonable and we'll say 10 minutes most of the time. Now, the other side to this is if it's only 1 or 2 chemicals that you got to put in and it's measured out ahead of time, you can literally run that pump at max, and I'm going to say 6 to 8 minutes for that. That's, I think, pretty feasible. So if I was to park this trailer, now, sorry, I could park the other trailer out in the field, and that would give me a decent run of time. I'm actually gonna pop this chart up 2 or 3 times here. We have different rates that we spray for different chemicals at different stages, but this chart's gonna show you some of the basics. And now burn off is when I'm most likely gonna be doing this on my own, and I will pretty much just park the truck somewhere close by and go back and forth to this rather than drive all over Hell's Half Acre. So during burn off, we go low rate because the plants are small. You don't need as good a coverage. You don't need to penetrate the canopy, all that kind of stuff. So really, if I had everything there, I could quite easily do a section if I was to have the sprayer out there and pull the truck out there with the water. I could actually get close to 700 acres based on what I had, but I don't like mixing part loads unless I have to. The problem is that after that point, it is a load, and then I have to drive, fill, drive, mix, and then get back to spraying. So it becomes very inefficient. It's actually more efficient to have that, just that other trailer sitting in the yard on that autofill line being full all day long. It's just that much easier, and it's one less thing to worry about. However, because this guy is going to have effectively 4 times the volume, actually 4 times the volume, because it's 1550 per tank, and there's 4 of them, this guy becomes a very different story. I can easily pull this guy out to the field wherever I need him and spray all day. Typically, as long as I'm spraying at least what the seeder can do in a day, I'm keeping up. That means I need to spray roughly 1 load a day. More often than not, I like to spray 2 because that gets me ahead. And then if there's a windy day or a drizzly day or something else, I don't have to worry. The seeder typically does 300 to 350 acres in a day. Based on the fact that we floated everything last fall, it's probably going to be closer to that 350 mark. So I need 1 tank, so 1250 on the sprayer, divided by 3.9 gives us 320 acres of tank. So I need 1 tank a day pretty much to keep up. If I was to spray 1,800 acres a day, that's essentially 6 days worth of work. And that's what I could get out of, if this was full and the sprayer was full, I could get 1,800 acres off of what is all here for water. So I've got 4 times the water. I could easily haul 4 times the chemical. And I could put this in a central location. I don't have to worry about running out of water every 2 hours, because I would actually have 14.5 hours worth of water without it filling. And I should clarify, the old tender is going to have 2,700 gallons of usable water, because there's usually about 100 gallons in the bottom that doesn't get sucked out, because these aren't bottom drain tanks. Neither are the new ones. So if we did 1,250 gallons on the sprayer and another 1,450 per tank, well, that gives us 2,750 on the old sprayer and trailer, sorry, on the sprayer and old trailer setup, versus 7,000 roughly, I think. 7,050 would be our new setup with 4 of these tanks. So 4 times 1,450, sorry, plus the 1,250 that's on the sprayer. Now, Devin, all those numbers are great. You know, the scenarios sound awesome, but how do you quantify it? Well, let's look at this chart again. This has what we used last year. And like I said, a big day of spraying for us is over 800 acres. So let's look at how your effective rate gets calculated. So the effective rate, it works out to be essentially how many acres per engine hour on your sprayer. So if I spray 800 acres in a day, and it takes me, well, let's do easy math, 20 hours, that means I'm doing 40 acres an hour. It's not very fast in a 120-foot sprayer. So let's do the scenario, which is scenario 1, where we're going back and forth. I would spray a tank. So like I mentioned, we're 1,250 gallons. During burn-off, we're 3.9 gallons per acre, which gives me 320 acres on a fill. I'm averaging 125 acres an hour in the field, which means it takes me 2.5 hours to spray out that tank, that 1,250 gallons. Next, I need to fold up, drive across the field, drive the 4 or 5 miles home, mix, which takes 20 minutes, drive back, unfold, drive back to where I left off, and carry on. So all in all, let's say 55 minutes of downtime, which we talked about earlier. That needs to get added on to the 2.5 hours of spraying time. So that's going to come out to roughly 3.4 hours per tank is my average. 320 acres divided by 3.4 works out to be 94 acres an hour. And we'll do the same thing, but on the land that's further away, it actually works out to be 80, pretty much right on the screws, 80 acres an hour. Let's say that that tender's parked out there. There's load on the sprayer. I hop in the sprayer and go. I spray load, again, still that 2.5 hours. But then I don't have to fold up. I go, 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, I'm parked at the tender. Another, let's be conservative and say 12 minutes to mix. Another 3 minutes, and I'm back where I need to be, where I left off. Let's just round that up to 20 minutes. Well, that gives me 113 acres an hour on engine time. That's 20% more acres an hour. Now, that might not sound like much. It might sound like a lot. And to me, it is. 20% more of anything is a significant change. It's actually 41% more acres per hour on the far land. That's massive. So let's do a weighted average. You know, we have X acres that are far away and Y acres that are close by, and we'll weight it that way. And I did the math, and it's just shy of 25%. Well, what does that look like in the grand scheme of things? So last year we put over 400 hours on the sprayer. Now, some of those hours really we can't do anything about because they're idle hours when you're warming up your machine in the morning, or when we're driving down from the Northland to the south, or south to the north, or out to the east. But in the grand scheme of things, let's say the extra 20 hours that had, and we'll say 400 total. I'll take 25 off of that, 25% off of that. That gets me down 100 hours. If I can save 100 hours a year, and let's say fuel, I pay myself a bit of a wage. Let's say depreciation and maintenance costs all lumped in, 250 bucks an hour. It's not really that far-fetched. I would say that's fairly accurate. Well, that's $25,000 a year that I'm saving. That pays for itself in year one. Those extra hours are actually going to free up time for us to go golfing and fishing and hang out at the lake. Yeah, it's going to be a major improvement. So thanks for listening to my rambling. We're going to carry on with the project. I'll keep you updated with posts as I start digging into stuff, as I start to get stuff done, and we'll show you some welding, we'll show you the progress, we'll show you the plumbing. Once I get the combine, I'll show you that, and once we get it all figured out, I'll show you that.